Under the dim, flickering glow of the fluorescent lights in a scarcely frequented restroom at Orient International Terminal, Mira Carter fixed her tired gaze on her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her wavy auburn locks, with hints of chestnut, fell in disarray around a face etched with lines of exhaustion and burden. Each crevice and shadow told a silent story of countless hours spent laboring at the modest yet bustling Westwood Bistro bedrobe. A cozy haven tucked away in a lively suburb. In that moment of solitude, as she splashed icy water over her pallid skin, Mira's thoughts swirled around the sacrifices made for her beloved 6-year-old son, Theo, whose bright eyes had always been her beacon amid life's tempests. Only 2 nights earlier, a shattering phone call had upended her fragile equilibrium. Her Aunt Vivian's voice, raw with grief and urgency, had delivered the harrowing news. Mira's mother, Eleanor Carter, now living in the chaotic yet charming city of Oldford, was critically ill. The devastating pronouncement had struck her like a tidal wave, leaving little room for hesitation. Every sleepless night and every selfless act converged into a singular, desperate mission: to reach her ailing mother before fate sealed a final farewell. With mounting bills, overdue rent, and Theo's ever-looming school fees casting long shadows over her every move, the journey seemed nearly impossible, if not for Vivian's unexpected generosity that had provided the means for this last-minute escape. The memory of her tearful goodbye with Theo that morning still stung. The little boy, clinging tightly to the frayed fabric of her denim jacket, had looked up with wide, tear-filled eyes, pleading, "Mommy, why can't I come with you?" With a trembling smile and a gentle kiss on his forehead, she had promised him enchanting tales of a wondrous new city and hinted at secret treasures awaiting him in Newford. Deep down, however, Mira harbored the painful truth that she could not guarantee a joyous return. The future, draped in uncertainty, loomed large. As if echoing the bittersweet parting, her ex-partner, Daniel, lingered in the doorway with crossed arms and a silent vow to safeguard Theo. A fragile truce born of shared responsibility despite their bitter past. The final boarding call for Flight 7A to Newford reverberated through the terminal, yanking Mira back to reality. Clutching her time-worn leather handbag, she darted through the cavernous concourse, each step pounding a rhythm of hope and desperation against the polished floor. At the gate, mere seconds before the attendant was about to close the door, she gasped, "Wait, please!" extending her ticket with a tremor of urgency that softened the attendant's stern demeanor just enough to grant her passage. Once aboard, Mira's pulse raced as she hurried along the jet bridge toward seat 14C. Fate, however, had arranged a twist far beyond a simple journey. Upon settling into her seat, she became acutely aware of the presence of a striking man in the adjacent window seat. Dressed in a sharply tailored charcoal suit paired with a crisp white shirt, he exuded an aura of dignified elegance. His dark hair was meticulously styled, framing a pair of piercing emerald eyes that spoke of intelligence and mystery. Absorbed in a leather-bound book, he seemed to belong to a world far removed from the cramped economy class. When Mira fumbled with her carry-on luggage, his calm, assured movement cut through her panic. Rising in one graceful motion, he took the burden from her with a quiet, "Let me help," his voice laced with a refined accent that evoked images of old-world charm. Embarrassment and gratitude mingled within her as she managed a soft thank you, barely audible above the low hum of the aircraft. There was something disarmingly reassuring about his quiet strength, a presence that, despite the chaos of her inner world, offered a momentary shelter. As the plane soared and its gentle vibrations lulled her into a fragile state of drowsiness, Mira battled to remain alert, yet the oppressive weight of fatigue proved insurmountable, and before she knew it, her weary head had found rest against the comforting firmness of the stranger's shoulder, a lapse that filled her with a mixture of mortification and unexpected solace. When she finally awoke, a flush of embarrassment surged over her. In a startled jolt, she retracted, inadvertently dislodging his finely tailored suit jacket from her shoulders. To her astonishment, the stranger's expression did not harden. Instead, he offered a warm, genuine smile. "You needed the rest," he remarked gently, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. With an air of casual courtesy, he pressed the call button above their seats, summoning a flight attendant. His subtle request for water, delivered with an elegant assurance, diffused the awkward tension, leaving Mira both humbled and curiously intrigued. Over the course of the flight, their conversation blossomed from hesitant introductions into a series of quiet, meaningful exchanges. He introduced himself as Adrian Callaghan, and his calm, measured tone resonated with a mix of charm and empathy. As the dialogue meandered from discussions about his international business consulting to her poignant confession of a family emergency, Mira found herself revealing more than she had intended, including a cherished photograph of Theo, a small boy whose radiant smile belied the struggles of their daily life. Adrian's playful teasing about her sleep-deprived state elicited a reluctant laugh, bridging the gap between their disparate worlds. In the soft, starlit silence that enveloped the cabin as the plane sailed across an endless midnight sky, Mira began to sense that this serendipitous encounter was no mere happenstance. Amid the turbulence of her own sorrow, the kindness of a stranger had ignited a spark of hope, a reminder that even in life's darkest moments, unexpected connections can offer comfort and the promise of renewal. As the final service commenced and the soft murmur of fellow passengers filled the air, Mira resolved to embrace whatever the future might hold, bolstered by both her steadfast love for Theo and the newfound compassion offered by Adrian. If you're enjoying this heartfelt journey of resilience, unexpected kindness, and the promise of new beginnings, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more uplifting stories that inspire and remind us all that even in our darkest moments, hope can be found. Your engagement means the world to us. Mira's gaze softened as Adrian's words hung in the air. "That's never easy," he murmured, his tone gentle yet laced with the weight of his own experiences. Mira's fingers curled tightly around her coffee cup, seeking a semblance of comfort amid the turbulence of their shared thoughts. The hum of the airplane engines provided a steady, if monotonous, soundtrack to the intimate exchange between two souls who had found a fragile connection in the midst of life's chaos. A silence fell over them, a silence that was not empty, but full of unspoken understandings and memories of past hardships. After a long pause, Adrian shifted in his seat and leaned back, stretching languidly as if trying to shrug off the weight of the world for a brief moment. "I don't have children of my own," he began, his voice softening, "but my sister has. Every time I visit her, I see that same look of exhaustion etched into her face. It's as if life's relentless pace has stamped its wear on her as well." His words, simple yet profound, resonated with Mira, who had long felt the burden of relentless struggle. Mira managed a small smile in reply. "I have one younger sister," she said, her tone quiet but sincere. "She's a doctor, always working, always caring, just like me, I suppose." Her admission was wrapped in both pride and sorrow, a reflection of a life spent constantly giving, even when there was little left to spare. Adrian's eyes crinkled as he mused. "So it seems exhaustion runs in the family." There was a guarded quality to the way he spoke, as if he had mastered the art of choosing his words with utmost care, a skill honed by years of navigating both corporate boardrooms and the unpredictable currents of life. Mira couldn't help but be intrigued by this man who exuded both strength and a certain vulnerability, a vulnerability he chose to shield behind calm, measured responses. For Mira, whose life had been a continuous battle for survival, moments of genuine, unguarded conversation were rare. She had long dismissed the idea of engaging in idle chit-chat with strangers, especially those who appeared to inhabit worlds far removed from her own. Yet here on this flight, amid the low murmur of fellow passengers and the distant glow of a moonlit sky, everything felt different. The exhaustion that had once numbed her emotions now seemed to pave the way for a spark of curiosity, an interest in learning more about Adrian Westbrook. The plane sailed steadily through the night, the window beside Mira revealing an endless tapestry of deep velvety darkness, punctuated by the scattered gleam of distant city lights. In that ethereal moment, the two travelers discovered an unexpected intimacy, a subtle bond forged in the shared space between vulnerability and hope. "So," Adrian eventually said, breaking the silence with a gentle chuckle, "what does little Theo enjoy, aside from keeping his mom awake all night?" His question, light-hearted yet probing, coaxed a smile from Mira. "Dinosaurs," she replied, her tone warming as she spoke of her son. "He's absolutely obsessed with them. He knows every name and era like it's second nature." The memory of Theo's animated chatter filled the cabin with a fleeting sense of joy, a reminder of simpler times. "If you let him talk about them, he could keep you entertained for hours," Mira added with a laugh. Adrian's eyes lit up at the mention of dinosaurs. "I used to be the same way," he confessed, a playful note in his voice. "I'd bombard my mother with endless facts about velociraptors and triceratops. Those creatures were my heroes back then." He paused, feigning thoughtfulness for a moment before adding, "Velociraptor. The fastest, the smartest, and always underestimated." Mira's laughter bubbled up again, and for a brief, carefree moment, the differences between their worlds seemed to vanish. But as if on cue, the steady rhythm of their conversation was interrupted by a sudden lurch. The plane had hit a patch of turbulence, the seatbelt sign blinked insistently back on, and a collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Mira's hands clenched the armrests instinctively, her heart racing as the aircraft shuddered. In that instant, Adrian reached out and gently covered her trembling hand with his own, his touch both warm and reassuring. "Just turbulence," he said calmly, his tone infusing her with a sense of security. "Nothing to worry about." His steady presence seemed to slow the frantic beating of her heart, easing the anxiety that had coiled within her. For a few precious minutes, as the turbulence subsided, they sat in quiet solidarity, their shared vulnerability deepening the connection that had begun to blossom between them. After the shaking ceased and a fragile calm returned, Adrian broke the silence once more. "Not a fan of flying?" he asked, his tone light but perceptive. Mira's response was quiet, almost introspective. "It's not the flight, it's everything piling up," she admitted softly. Adrian nodded in understanding, his eyes conveying a quiet empathy that made her feel seen, even if only for a fleeting moment. Curiosity nudged her further, prompting her to inquire, "What about you? You always seem so in control. Do you ever get nervous?" Adrian's response was a wry smile paired with a hint of melancholy. "Not often," he replied, though the simplicity of his answer betrayed a deeper, unspoken history, a life where control had been both a shield and a prison. Emboldened by the safe space they had inadvertently created, Mira mimicked his relaxed posture, finding a momentary balance between confidence and vulnerability. "You're a businessman, flying frequently, reading classics. You have this knack for calming strangers, yet you never speak much of yourself," she observed, her tone both curious and genuine. Adrian's lips curved into a half-smile as he countered, "I could ask you the same, Mira." A light-hearted exchange followed before a serious note permeated the air. With a slow, deliberate sigh, Adrian ran a hand through his dark hair, his perfectly styled strands now rebelliously tousled. "All right, Mira Carter," he said, his voice low and earnest. "Let's make a deal. You share something real about yourself, and I'll do the same." Mira, taken aback yet intrigued, raised an inquisitive eyebrow before softly agreeing. "Okay," she murmured, the vulnerability in her tone belying years of self-restraint. Adrian began, his words imbued with honesty. "I wasn't always the calm, controlled man you see today. When I was younger, life was chaotic, a maelstrom of unpredictable events that forced me to take control at an early age. I learned quickly that, if I didn't seize control, someone else would." His admission was raw, touching a nerve that Mira herself knew all too well. "And what about you?" Adrian prompted gently, leaning in as if to bridge the gap between their disparate lives. Mira hesitated, her voice trembling slightly as she confessed, "I always thought I'd be more than this. A waitress barely scraping by, a single mom fighting to keep a roof over our heads. I had dreams, grand dreams, but somewhere along the way life forced me to let them go." Her words carried the weight of years spent sacrificing personal ambitions for survival. Adrian's eyes softened, and in that moment, a spark of hope lit within them both. "Maybe it's time to reclaim those dreams," he suggested quietly, a challenge laced with promise. Before either could dwell further on their shared vulnerabilities, the cabin announcer's voice brought them back to reality. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our descent into Aurora City shortly. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Mira's heart sank as the reality of her urgent journey loomed ahead. She glanced at Adrian, who now seemed lost in thought, his fingers idly tapping the worn leather of his book cover. The conversation resumed as the plane prepared to land, and before long Adrian turned to her with a practical query. "Do you have a ride from the airport?" he asked, his tone both courteous and matter-of-fact. "No, I was planning on taking a cab," Mira replied, feeling a flicker of uncertainty. "Allow me," Adrian offered, producing a sleek business card from his wallet. "My driver can get you wherever you need to go." His offer, though seemingly simple, carried the weight of an unspoken promise, an assurance that amidst the chaos, she might not be alone. Mira's eyes widened as she recognized the embossed lettering. Adrian Westbrook Global Holdings. The name resonated with power and prestige, an emblem of corporate might and high-stakes negotiation. A mixture of awe and trepidation surged through her. Business consulting, huh? She remarked dryly, half exasperated and half intrigued. Adrian's response was a quiet laugh, a gentle shrug that belied the complexity of his world. Before the passengers disembarked, the cabin was filled with the customary rustle of gathering belongings, the clicking of overhead compartments, and the unfastening of seatbelts. Mira remained seated for a moment longer, transfixed by the business card in her hand, a tangible link through a world she had only glimpsed through the haze of exhaustion and fleeting moments of connection. Adrian's calm presence had been a beacon amid the storm, a reminder that sometimes life's unexpected detours might lead to something transformative. As the plane taxied to a halt and the cabin doors slid open, the crisp, biting air of Aurora City enveloped Mira. The city pulsed with life. The distant honking of cars, the murmurs of pedestrians, and the glow of streetlights creating a canvas of urban possibility. Adrian, with his quiet confidence, extended his arm once more and said, "My driver is waiting out front. Come with me." Mira hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding as she weighed the choice between independence and the comforting unknown. In that split second, the thought of scrambling for a taxi, alone in an unfamiliar city with a heavy heart, seemed unbearable. The steady, caring look in Adrian's emerald eyes spoke volumes, and with a resigned yet hopeful nod, she agreed. And so, Mira Carter stepped off the plane into a sprawling urban landscape teeming with life and possibilities, hand in hand with a man whose very presence challenged her to dream once again. It was a moment of convergence, a crossroads where despair met hope, where the pain of past sacrifices might finally give way to the promise of a brighter future. If you're enjoying this unfolding story of unexpected connections and the courage to embrace change, please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories that remind us all that, even in our darkest moments, hope is just a conversation away. The cacophony of blaring horns, flashing neon lights, and taxis weaving through congested avenues overwhelmed Mira as she stepped into a cityscape that was both familiar and startlingly transformed. Having grown up in this very urban jungle, she had long forgotten how fiercely the metropolis could announce itself. Its relentless energy and vivid chaos, now a sharp contrast to the calm of California skies she had once known. In this reimagined New York, renamed Aurora City for a fresher vibe, every sound and every movement carried the pulse of a living, breathing entity. Outside the hospital, the world roared in a frenzy. Horns blared, emergency lights cut through the twilight, and streams of taxis navigated the congested lanes with precision born of necessity. Mira's heart pounded in rhythm with the chaotic tempo of Aurora City. It was as if every corner of the street was vying for her attention, a stark reminder of the relentless pace of life that she had once known so intimately. After years away in the sun-drenched landscapes of California, returning to Aurora City was like plunging into a vivid memory where every sense was reawakened. Adrian's driver, a tall, broad-shouldered man clad in a sleek black suit, stood waiting like a silent guardian. With a courteous nod toward Adrian, he swung open the door of a polished obsidian Bentley parked elegantly at the curb. For a moment, Mira hesitated, her eyes darting between the luxury car and the bustling street. Then, with a resolute breath, she slid into the sumptuous interior. The plush leather seats embraced her tired frame, and the subtle aroma of expensive cologne mingled with the soft hum of the engine, creating an atmosphere of refined tranquility amid urban mayhem. Without a word of protest, Adrian joined her in the passenger seat, exuding the effortless confidence that defined his every gesture. The driver's polite inquiry, "Where to, Miss Carter?" was met by Mira's quiet, steady response, "Lenox Hill Hospital." In this reimagined narrative, the hospital's name might change, but its importance remained unaltered. A sanctuary of hope and healing in the heart of Aurora City. For several moments, the car moved through the chaotic urban tapestry in a companionable silence. Mira's gaze was fixed on the familiar streets outside, each one stirring memories of a bygone era, a delicate interplay of nostalgia and stark reality. Suddenly, Adrian broke the silence. "Do you have someone waiting for you at the hospital?" he asked, his tone gentle and laced with genuine concern. Mira exhaled slowly, the weight of her recent burdens visible in her measured reply. "My aunt," she confided. "She called 2 days ago. She said my mother's condition had worsened." Adrian's eyes, deep and unreadable, registered her words with quiet empathy. "How long has she been unwell?" he inquired softly, prompting a hesitation from Mira. A momentary pause as she grappled with the vulnerability of sharing such personal details with a man whose world seemed so far removed from hers. I was told it was only a year ago, yet I always believed she had more time," she murmured, her voice wavering at the end. In that shared silence, Adrian's understanding was palpable. "You would have come sooner if you could," he stated evenly, as if acknowledging the painful reality behind her journey. Mira's eyes fell to her trembling hands, her heart heavy with unspoken regrets and the burden of decisions made in haste. "Yeah," she admitted softly, a single word loaded with years of solitude and sacrifice. His steady gaze did not belittle her struggles. Rather, it provided a quiet reassurance that she was not alone. "You're here now," Adrian affirmed simply, a statement that carried the promise of solidarity, and for the first time since that fateful phone call shattered her world, Mira allowed herself to take a breath, to accept the moment for what it was. As the Bentley pulled up to the grand entrance of the hospital, Mira's pulse raced with anticipation and anxiety. This was the threshold of a new chapter, a convergence of her past and the uncertain future. "Thank you for the ride," she began, reaching for the door handle with a mix of gratitude and reluctance. But before she could disembark, Adrian's calm yet earnest voice stopped her. "Mira," he called softly, prompting her to turn. His expression had changed. There was a tenderness there, an unspoken offer of support. "If you need anything at all, call me," he said. Surprised by his generosity, Mira hesitated before responding. "Adrian, you really don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted smoothly, his tone leaving no room for refusal. In that charged moment, something ineffable passed between them. Mira, a woman who had spent her life relying solely on herself, felt an unfamiliar stirring, a tentative hope that accepting help might not mean surrendering her independence. With a slight nod, she agreed. Adrian's eyes locked with hers for another lingering second before he reached into his suit jacket and produced a second business card. "This one has my personal number," he explained, handing it to her with deliberate care. As their fingers brushed briefly, a spark of connection ignited, a promise that their paths might cross again. "Take care of yourself, Mira," he said quietly. And with that, she stepped out of the Bentley and into the bustling hospital corridor. The cool night air hit her like a wave as she walked toward the hospital doors, the city's ceaseless energy enveloping her. Despite the turmoil within, she sensed that this departure was not a final goodbye. Somehow, deep down, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where Adrian Callaghan's influence might ripple through her life in ways she had never imagined. Inside the hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic and the buzz of fluorescent lights created an atmosphere of both anxiety and cautious hope. In the crowded waiting area, her Aunt Vivian stood near the nurse's station, her face etched with lines of worry and relief. Upon seeing Mira, Vivian's eyes lit up with gratitude and she pulled her into a tight embrace. "Mira, thank God you're here," she whispered. Before Mira could ask the dreaded question of her mother's condition, Vivian's voice, though shaky, provided a measure of solace. "She's stable for now. Last night was rough, but she's pulled through," Vivian assured her. With each word, Mira's tension eased, replaced by a cautious optimism. Soon, Vivian led Mira through quiet, softly lit corridors until they reached a modest room. Mira paused at the door, steeling herself for the sight within. Her mother, once vibrant and full of life, now appeared fragile and diminished, a stark reminder of the relentless passage of time. "Mom," Mira whispered as she entered, her voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and relief. Recognition flickered in her mother's eyes, and a weak but genuine smile played across her lip. "Mira, you came," her mother murmured, reaching out to grasp her daughter's hand. Tears welled in Mira's eyes, but she blinked them away, determined to remain strong. "I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner," she whispered, her voice breaking as she squeezed her mother's frail hand in silent apology. "You're here now, and that's all that matters," her mother responded, her words a balm to Mira's weary soul. After what felt like hours filled with quiet vigil and hushed reassurances, Mira finally stepped out into the cool night once again. The brisk air was a stark contrast to the sterile warmth inside, and as she pulled out her phone, a new message flashed on the screen. A text from Adrian. "Just checking in, how's your mother?" it read. Mira paused, taken aback by the unexpected tenderness from someone who was, by all accounts, a stranger, a billionaire whose world was a far cry from hers. With trembling fingers, she replied, "She's stable for now. It's been a long night, but I'm just grateful she's still here." Almost immediately, Adrian's response came in. "I'm glad to hear that. I meant it when I said if you need anything, let me know." A small, genuine smile broke through Mira's stoic facade. For years, she had prided herself on her independence, on managing life's burdens alone. Now, however, someone was offering not just assistance, but care, and it unsettled her in the most unexpected way. The following morning, as dawn began to cast a gentle glow over Aurora's city, Mira sat quietly beside her mother's bed. Her phone vibrated again, and this time it wasn't a text. It was a call from Adrian. With a cautious exhale, Mira stepped into the corridor and answered, her voice low and tentative. "Hey," she greeted softly. "Hey, Mira," Adrian replied with a warmth that belied his usual reserve. "I was thinking, have you eaten yet?" His question, so ordinary in tone, startled her. Not really," she admitted. "Good, because I'm sending a car to pick you up. Meet me for breakfast?" His invitation hung in the air, both unexpected and oddly comforting. "Wait, what? Adrian, I can't just leave my mom." Mira started, only for him to interject gently, "Just take a break. I promise you'll be back before she even notices you're gone." His soothing assurance was hard to resist, even though part of her instinctively argued against abandoning her responsibilities. But as he softly asked, "When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" a thought sparked within her, a reminder that perhaps, for the first time in years, it was acceptable to care for her own well-being. After a moment's internal battle, Mira sighed and conceded, "Fine, but only for an hour." Adrian's chuckle came through the line, and soon enough she found herself stepping back outside the hospital, into the crisp morning air. The city had transformed overnight. The chaos of the previous night had given way to a gentle, promising calm. Minutes later, the sleek black car arrived once more, echoing the luxury of the night before. Inside the car, as the cityscape blurred past the tinted windows, Mira's thoughts churned. "What the hell am I doing?" she wondered silently, a blend of trepidation and curiosity coloring her thoughts. 15 minutes later, the car stopped before an elegant cafe nestled between towering glass structures in Midtown, a place far removed from the familiar haunts of her past life. Here, polished businessmen in designer suits discussed high-stakes deals over artisanal espresso, and yet, as the door swung open and she stepped into that refined ambiance, Adrian was already there, impeccably dressed in his tailored suit, his presence as magnetic as ever. "You made it," he remarked with a smile that danced between genuine warmth and quiet amusement. Mira crossed her arms, feigning exasperation. "I don't recall having a choice," she retorted lightly. Adrian's smirk deepened as he replied, "You always have a choice, Mira." Despite the playful banter, there was a sincerity in his eyes that made her wonder if perhaps for the first time she might allow someone else to share her burdens. Inside the private booth at the back of the cafe, away from the prying eyes of the high-powered clientele, the atmosphere softened. A waiter, dressed immaculately, arrived with menus and a knowing smile. "The usual for Mr. Westbrook?" Adrian teased gently, glancing at Mira. With a raised brow, she replied, "The usual? And for me?" Adrian's playful response brought a genuine laugh from Mira, a sound that seemed to release years of pent-up tension. As they shared a hearty breakfast, Mira savoring each bite of a warm latte and a freshly prepared breakfast platter, the conversation took a turn toward honesty. Adrian leaned back and, with a glimmer of curiosity, said, "Tell me something real, Mira." Caught off guard by the intimacy of the question, Mira hesitated as she considered opening up once more. aware that each revelation was a step toward a vulnerability she had long guarded. If you've enjoyed following Mira's journey, a tale of hardship, resilience, and unexpected connections, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe for more inspirational stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this heartfelt journey. Remember, sometimes the courage to let someone in can change everything. Mira paused, letting the taste of her latte mingle with a wave of memories, stalling as she tried to steady herself. Her voice, soft and tentative, finally broke the silence. "I used to want to be a journalist," she admitted, a confession that carried with it a trace of faded ambition. Adrian's brow lifted in mild surprise, his emerald eyes flickering with an unexpected curiosity. "What happened?" he asked quietly, his tone laced with genuine interest. Mira exhaled slowly, her gaze dropping to the warm ceramic cup cradled in her hands. "Life," she replied simply. "I got pregnant, and everything changed. I had to put my dreams on hold just to survive." A hush fell between them as Adrian absorbed her words. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice soft but insistent. "That doesn't mean you have to stop dreaming." At that, Mira's heart tightened with a bittersweet ache. "It's a little late for that," she murmured, bitterness and regret mingling in her tone. Adrian's expression turned unreadable, a brief flash of vulnerability passing over his features. "I don't believe that," he countered, his voice firm yet gentle. Mira let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Easy for you to say. You probably always knew you'd be successful." For a moment, silence reclaimed the space between them as Adrian sipped his coffee and then set the cup down deliberately. "Not exactly," he admitted after a beat. Mira's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "What do you mean?" she pressed. Adrian's tone shifted, his next words steady and candid. "I wasn't born into wealth, Mira. I built my company from nothing." His admission hung in the air like a revelation, challenging the assumptions she had long held. "I grew up in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn. My dad was a factory worker and my mom was a nurse. We had enough to get by, but nothing more." He paused, allowing his story to settle in her mind. "I learned early that if I wanted something different, I had to create it myself." Mira stared at him, a mix of shock and admiration stirring within her. The polished, confident businessman before her was not a product of privilege at all. His success was born of sheer determination and resilience. "Why did you never tell me that?" she asked, her tone a mixture of wonder and a touch of reproach. Adrian smirked lightly and replied, "You never asked." Though Mira rolled her eyes in playful exasperation, a new curiosity took root in her heart. Who exactly was Adrian Callaghan, and why did she suddenly yearn to know everything about him? Their breakfast was winding down when Adrian suddenly leaned forward, his eyes glinting with a spark of mischief. "I have an idea," he announced, causing Mira to tense in apprehension. "You said you wanted to be a journalist, right?" she questioned, frowning as she processed his words. "Yeah, but—" she began, her voice trailing off as she struggled to form the right reply. Adrian's tone was gentle but filled with resolve. "What if I offered you a job?" he proposed, his question hanging in the air like a challenge to fate. Mira blinked in disbelief. "What? Not at Callaghan Global, please," she protested weakly. Adrian quickly clarified. "No, I meant at my media company, one of the largest independent digital news outlets in the country. I can get you in." The words sent a jolt through her system. Her stomach flipped as reality began to sink in. "Adrian, that's insane! You don't even know if I'm any good at it," she countered, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and insecurity. With a slight tilt of his head, Adrian's expression softened, and he spoke with quiet conviction. "I know you're smart, Mira, and I know you're not meant to wait tables forever." His words, simple yet laden with promise, made her feel both overwhelmed and inexplicably seen. "Why would you do this for me?" she whispered, her eyes searching his for an answer. "Because I believe in second chances," Adrian replied earnestly. His gaze bore into hers, stripping away the years of self-doubt and resignation that had defined her life. For so long, Mira had convinced herself that her dreams had died the day Theo was born, that she was destined only to survive rather than truly live. As the conversation deepened, Mira found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. The possibility of reclaiming her lost dreams was both intoxicating and terrifying. "You're offering me a job?" she repeated in an odd, trembling voice. Adrian nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Yes, just like that," he confirmed. Her heart pounded with a mix of exhilaration and fear. For years, she had fought tooth and nail to simply survive, resigning herself to a life that left little room for aspiration. Yet here, in a moment of raw honesty, a man who had once seemed untouchable was offering her a chance to rewrite her story. "But I haven't written professionally in years," Mira protested, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I wouldn't even know where to start." Adrian's gaze remained steady as he leaned forward and said, "Then learn. You're smart and you have drive. You can figure it out." His words, delivered with unwavering confidence, both comforted and challenged her. "It isn't that simple," she countered, a shaky breath escaping her lips. "It is," Adrian replied firmly. "You're the one making it complicated." Mira's internal battle raged as doubt crept in. What if she failed? What if she wasn't good enough? And then there was Theo, her precious son, who depended on her stability. "I have a son, Adrian," she reminded him softly. "I can't just take a high-profile job and hope it works out without considering everything." "And what part of waiting tables for minimum wage is stable?" Adrian shot back, his tone gentle yet insistent. His words struck a chord deep within her, resonating with the silent struggles she had endured for years. For days, Mira wrestled with the decision. Her mother's condition remained stable, and she spent nearly every waking hour at the hospital, oscillating between worry and a hesitant hope sparked by Adrian's offer. Then, on the fourth night, her phone rang. The screen flashed an unknown number, and with a furrowed brow, she answered. "Hello?" came a crisp, professional voice on the other end. "Is this Mira Carter?" the voice inquired. "Yes, who is this?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "My name is Clara Grant. I'm the editor-in-chief at Westbrook Media," the voice continued. "Adrian told me about you and asked me to take a look at your background." Mira's stomach flipped as she processed the news. What?" she thought incredulously. Clara continued. "I don't usually entertain favors, but I read some of the articles you wrote in college. You have potential. So here's the deal. There's a staff writer position open. No handouts, no special treatment. You'll have to prove yourself." The reality of the offer hit her like a tidal wave. This wasn't just Adrian's idle suggestion over breakfast. He had truly put his money where his mouth was. "I don't know what to say," Mira admitted hesitantly. "Just say yes," Clara urged bluntly. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer is gone." The line went dead, leaving Mira staring at her phone, heart pounding as the enormity of the choice loomed over her. The following morning, as dawn broke over Aurora City, Mira's mind was a maelstrom of thoughts and emotions. Inside her mother's hospital room, she exchanged quiet greetings with her frail yet hopeful mother. "Morning, sweetheart," her mother whispered, and Mira forced a smile in return. The conversation was brief, filled with unspoken concerns, until a gentle knock at the door interrupted them. Mira turned, and her breath caught in her throat as Adrian stood in the doorway, a bouquet of fresh flowers in hand. "I figured it was time I introduced myself properly," he said smoothly. Her mother's eyes twinkled with curiosity. "And who might you be?" she asked with a playful lilt. "Adrian Callaghan, Mom, a friend of your daughter's," he replied with an easy charm. Her mother chuckled, teasing, "If you're here to see my daughter, you must be important." Mira felt a flush of embarrassment mixed with a secret thrill. Adrian's calm, confident smile made it clear that he was indeed a significant presence in her life now. After a few minutes of small talk, Adrian gently excused himself and pulled Mira aside into a quiet hallway. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. Mira hesitated before nodding, following him with arms crossed. "What are you doing here, Adrian?" she inquired, her voice low and cautious. "I'm checking on you," he replied simply. "You don't have to let me, but I want to." His steady gaze, filled with unwavering care, disarmed her defense. "And you spoke to Clara, didn't you?" he added. "Did she make you an offer?" Mira nodded slowly, the weight of it all settling in. "I don't know, Adrian. It's a lot. I didn't ask for any of this." Adrian studied her for a long moment before gently stating, "Maybe you should start asking for more." That night, as Mira sat alone in the quiet waiting area of the hospital, she stared at her phone, Clara's words echoing in her mind. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer is gone." With her heart pounding, she finally dialed the number, feeling that for the first time in years, the future was wide open, if only she could choose to seize it. If you've been moved by Mira's journey of rediscovery, of facing fears and daring to dream again, share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this heartfelt journey. Remember, sometimes taking a leap of faith can be the first step toward a brighter future. Clara's crisp voice answered on the line, and Mira's heart pounded as she spoke. Clara? The very name resonated with authority and promise. In that brief moment, determination surged through her. Clenching her fist in a silent act of resolve, she declared, "I'll take the job." There was a pause, a beat of silence where the weight of her decision pressed upon her soul. Then, in a calm yet assertive tone, the voice on the other end replied, "Good choice. Be in my office Monday morning." And just like that, the call ended. Mira exhaled slowly, a mix of trepidation and anticipation swirling within her. This was the moment, a leap into the unknown that she had long avoided. For the first time in years, she no longer felt paralyzed by fear. Instead, a new fire kindled within her as she stood before the gleaming headquarters of Westbrook Media. A modern, intimidating glass and steel edifice that seemed to pulse with the promise of endless possibility. With a deep, steadying breath, Mira pushed open the grand entrance and stepped into the lobby. A friendly receptionist greeted her with a warm smile, directing her to the 25th floor. The elevator ride, filled with a quiet hum and the soft chime of passing floors, felt both interminable and transformative. Each passing moment brought her closer to a future that she had almost forgotten existed. When the elevator doors finally slid open, Mira was met by Clara Grant herself, who stood poised with an air of brisk efficiency. "Mira," Clara said without preamble, "follow me." Mira hurried after her, her heart racing with a cocktail of anxiety and exhilaration. As they navigated through a corridor lined with sleek workstations and the constant murmur of busy journalists, the controlled chaos of the newsroom unfolded before her eyes. A symphony of ringing phones, rapid keyboard clacks, and hushed conversations filled with urgency and passion. Clara led Mira to a modest desk tucked away in a quiet corner. "This is yours," she announced, gesturing to the freshly assigned workspace. Mira stood frozen for a moment, absorbing the reality of the situation. She now had an office, a real job that promised a second chance at realizing the dreams she had shelved away for far too long. "I expect you to prove yourself," Clara added, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Adrian might have opened the door for you, but if you don't deliver, you won't last here." Mira lifted her chin, meeting Clara's unwavering gaze. "I wouldn't expect anything less," she replied, her voice steady with newfound confidence. Clara smirked approvingly before snapping, "Good, now get to work." And so, Mira Carter, a former waitress and a single mother who had once believed her dreams were lost to the relentless grind of survival, stepped into an entirely new world. Hours into her first day, her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. With a wry smile, she quickly typed back, "Adrian, how's the first day?" Almost immediately, another message popped up. "Your editor is terrifying, that's why she's the best." Mira chuckled softly before her fingers danced across the screen once more as she responded, "Mira, I think I might die." His reply came swiftly, "You won't. You're tougher than you think." A warmth spread in her chest as she read his words. Before she could respond further, another message arrived. "Adrian, dinner tonight? You owe me for the job hookup." Rolling her eyes with playful exasperation, she texted back, "Oh, so now I owe you?" To which he replied simply, "Absolutely." After a brief moment, she added, "One dinner? But that's it." Adrian's reply was succinct, "Adrian will see." Mira sighed, knowing full well that, with Adrian Callaghan, nothing was ever just one thing. Later that evening, Mira found herself at a modest restaurant chosen specifically to avoid the pretentiousness of places where even a simple dish cost more than her weekly grocery bill. The ambiance was relaxed, dim lighting, polished wooden furnishings, and a breathtaking view of a reimagined Manhattan skyline that shimmered with an almost surreal quality. And there, waiting for her, was Adrian Callaghan. Dressed impeccably, he exuded an air of calm assurance as he greeted her with a casual, "You made it," accompanied by a knowing smile that sent a thrill down her spine. Crossing her arms in playful protest, Mira teased, "I don't recall having a choice." Adrian's smirk deepened as he countered, "You always have a choice, Mira." The banter flowed naturally between them, easing the tension as they settled into their private booth. Soon, a waiter arrived with menus, and amidst the clink of cutlery and soft background music, their conversation deepened. Adrian asked about her work, her childhood, and the dreams she had once nurtured. He listened with genuine interest, a stark contrast to the world she had known, while she, in turn, found herself cautiously delving into his life. "So, Mr. Billionaire," Mira teased with a playful glint in her eye, "what do you do for fun, besides running empires and flying first class?" Adrian smirked and, with a twinkle in his eye, confessed, "Would you believe me if I said I like boxing?" Mira raised an eyebrow in amused disbelief. "Boxing? Really?" He nodded, swirling his drink thoughtfully. "It keeps me focused, and after a long day, hitting something is a great stress reliever." Mira couldn't help but imagine the composed, powerful Adrian Callaghan in a boxing ring, a stark contrast to the polished businessman she knew. As the dinner progressed, the conversation veered into deeper territory. With each shared laugh and earnest exchange, Mira felt the invisible walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. Yet, even as she grew more enchanted by his presence, a quiet, persistent voice whispered caution. The realization hit her. This dinner, these encounters with Adrian, were more than just casual meetings. They were dangerous in their ability to stir emotions she had long suppressed. When the meal drew to a close, Adrian leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You're staying in New York, right?" he asked, his eyes searching hers for an answer. Mira's breath caught in her throat. "For now? Why?" he pressed gently. "Because I want to see you again," she admitted softly, her voice trembling with the confession. Adrian quickly added, "I'm not asking for anything serious, I just like spending time with you." Mira's heart pounded in her chest, and though a part of her screamed that this was a bad idea, another part, the part that still dreamed, whispered that perhaps, for the first time in a long time, she might dare to embrace the possibility of change. Over the following days, Mira's life became a delicate dance of deadlines at Westbrook Media, long hours at the hospital, and the unpredictable rhythm of Adrian's texts and calls. His messages, often casual and effortlessly charming, reminded her of his constant presence, even when she tried to push him away. One evening, as she sat on her small apartment couch, contemplating the labyrinth of choices before her, a text appeared. "Adrian, dinner was fun, let's do it again." A reluctant smile tugged at her lips, and despite the caution in her heart, she replied with a simple, "Maybe." That same night, Mira's phone rang, a call from Adrian. "Hey," she answered, keeping her voice even, despite the whirlwind of emotions. His voice, as smooth as ever, inquired, "What are you doing right now?" After a brief pause, she replied, "Just leaving the hospital." The conversation continued with gentle inquiries about her mother's health and quiet reassurances from Adrian that he would always be there if she needed help. Then, as if to tip the scales once more, Adrian proposed something unexpected. "Come to an event with me this weekend, a charity gala. I need a date." Mira froze. A charity gala? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Before she could muster a response, he added, "It's just one night, free food, an open bar, and the chance to wear a ridiculously expensive dress." Despite herself, a small laugh escaped her lips. "I'll think about it," she managed to say, and after a moment of silence, Adrian confirmed, "I'll have a dress sent to your apartment." With that, the call ended, leaving Mira to stare at her phone in disbelief. 2 days later, a mysterious box arrived at her doorstep. With hesitant fingers, Mira opened it to reveal a stunning dress. A deep, elegant navy creation adorned with delicate beadwork that shimmered like stardust. In that moment, as she held the dress in her hands, Mira realized the true extent of Adrian Callaghan's influence. He was a man who could transform her world with a single gesture, a gesture that beckoned her toward a future filled with possibility. Later that evening, Mira stepped into the grand ballroom of the gala, The space was resplendent with glowing chandeliers, polished marble floors, and an air of refined elegance that was both alien and alluring. And there, amid the sea of sophisticated guests, she finally saw him. Adrian stood across the room, his presence commanding attention as always, a silent promise of both danger and delight in his eyes. If you've enjoyed following Mira's extraordinary journey from the depths of despair to the brink of a new beginning, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this heartfelt adventure. Remember, sometimes the courage to take a leap of faith can transform your life in ways you never imagined. Adrian Callaghan stood near the bar, impeccably dressed in a sleek black tuxedo that accentuated his chiseled features, his emerald eyes flickering with an unreadable intensity as they caught sight of Mira. For a long moment, she stood frozen, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and dread. She swallowed hard, realizing with a surge of regret that she should have said no. She should have walked away. But now, with the glamour of the gala all around her, it was far too late to retreat. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Mira resolved to let her nerves settle. For years, she had convinced herself that she did not belong in places like this. Majestic ballrooms adorned with crystal chandeliers, opulent designer gowns, and champagne toasts that cost more than her weekly rent. Yet here she was, having been pulled into this glittering world by none other than Adrian Callaghan. As he moved toward her with that effortless, magnetic confidence, his emerald eyes roamed over her with both appraisal and something else, something that made her heart flutter with uncertainty. "You look stunning," he said softly, and Mira's throat tightened as she struggled to meet his gaze. His voice held a dangerous edge, not physically threatening, but capable of upending her world with a single word. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath. Adrian merely smirked, adding playfully, "A little, perhaps." His tone was teasing, yet it carried the weight of an unspoken promise. "But you're here, so I must have done something right," he continued. Mira sighed, half amused and half exasperated. "Remind me again why I agreed to this," she challenged, a spark of defiance in her tone. "Because you secretly enjoy spending time with me?" Adrian replied casually, his words light enough to be a joke yet laden with sincerity. Mira scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Keep dreaming, Callaghan," she retorted. But as the evening unfolded, Adrian's laughter, a deep, rich sound, seemed to wash away her apprehensions, and for the first time that night, she felt her nervousness begin to fade. The gala itself was exactly what Mira had anticipated, a gathering of the elite in designer attire, networking over extravagant drinks and engaging in polite conversation about charitable causes. She sipped her champagne, listening as Adrian navigated the room with the ease of a seasoned diplomat. He moved among the guests like a maestro, reading the room perfectly and making each person feel as if they were the most important individual there. It was then that Mira realized, with a hint of awe, that Adrian Callaghan could have anything he desired, simply by asking. "You're staring," Adrian murmured suddenly, turning to face her with a playful glint in his eyes. Mira flushed, hastily taking another sip of her drink. "I was just thinking how exhausting it must be to be you," she said lightly, though the truth of her words betrayed a deeper sentiment. Adrian chuckled, cautioning her gently, "Careful, Carter, you almost sound like you care." Mira rolled her eyes, replying with a teasing tone, "Let's not get carried away." Then, as if breaking through the pretense, Adrian leaned in, his voice lowering just for her. "Too late." The word sent a shiver down her spine, and for a fleeting moment, the opulent surroundings of the gala faded away, leaving only the intensity of their private exchange. Just as Mira excused herself to the restroom, her name was called. "Mira Carter, right?" A woman dressed in a striking blood-red gown with sleek dark hair and a sharp, knowing smile approached. Mira frowned slightly as the woman tilted her head inquisitively. "Yes," she replied cautiously. The woman continued, "I'm Sabrina Caldwell." Her tone was smooth, almost rehearsed, as she added, "I know Adrian very well." Mira's stomach churned with apprehension. Sabrina's casual manner hinted at secrets hidden beneath the surface. Later, when Mira found Adrian again mingling with another guest, his demeanor changed instantly. "What happened?" he asked, guiding her to a quieter corner. Crossing her arms, Mira demanded, Who is Sabrina Caldwell? Adrian's jaw tightened imperceptibly before he sighed and admitted, "She's my ex-fiancée." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Mira's eyes widened in shock. "You're what?" she stammered. Adrian continued carefully. "It was a long time ago. I thought it was over, but you weren't going to let it drop, were you?" His frustration was palpable as he explained. "She's not just some random woman at this party. She's the reason I've always kept my personal life separate." Mira's heart sank as the truth settled in. Adrian Callaghan was a man of many secrets, and she was beginning to understand that her own place in his world might be more precarious than she'd imagined. The rest of the night passed in a blur of muted conversations and uneasy silences. On the ride home, the car was filled with a silence so heavy that Mira could almost hear the ticking of her own anxious heart. Later, lying in bed, she stared up at the ceiling, her mind a tangled mess of what-ifs and doubts. Was she merely a fleeting distraction for him? The uncertainty gnawed at her until her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. It was a message from Adrian. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" Mira exhaled and, against her better judgment, replied with a tentative message. "Am I making a mistake, Adrian?" After a long pause, his reply was curt. "No." Then, after another pause, he added, "Ask me that again in person." The implication was clear. This was far from over. The next morning, Mira walked into the bustling office at Westbrook Media, feeling strangely altered. Phones rang, reporters hustled through deadlines, and the familiar aroma of burnt coffee lingered in the air, but her thoughts were solely on Adrian. When a text from him arrived later that afternoon, instructing her to meet him in his office, she did so without hesitation. Yet, the moment she stepped inside, a disquieting tension filled the space. Adrian stood by the window, his usually relaxed posture replaced by a rigid, unfamiliar tension. "Mira," he began, turning to face her with a seriousness that startled her. "Sabrina wasn't wrong," he confessed quietly. Mira's stomach dropped. "So you do keep things separate?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian exhaled slowly, then continued, "I used to. With Sabrina, with everyone before you. It was easier that way." He paused, locking his eyes with hers. "But now, I don't want to keep you separate from anything." In that charged moment, Mira's heart pounded as she realized she stood at a crossroads. She could retreat into her old life of guarded survival, or dare to let someone in. Taking a deep breath, Mira stepped closer. "Then prove it," she challenged softly. Adrian reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "All right, Carter," he murmured, his voice low and resolute. "Let's see how this goes. No more walls, no more keeping things apart." For the first time, Mira felt the fragile promise of trust between them. A promise that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As the night drew to a close, Mira knew she was in too deep. Adrian Callaghan was a man who thrived on control, whose life was an intricate tapestry of order and precision. Yet here she was, a burst of chaos who might just unravel him. In that moment of vulnerability, as she gazed into his eyes, searching for the truth, she silently vowed to hold on to her dreams and her heart, even if it meant stepping into the storm. If you've enjoyed following Mira's journey, a story of courage, vulnerability, and the transformative power of taking risks, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on this heartfelt adventure. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to let someone in and trust that together you can weather any storm. Adrian turned back to her, his eyes locking onto Mira with an intensity that left her momentarily breathless. "The one thing I never saw coming," he murmured, his voice low and weighted with unspoken truth. Mira swallowed hard, feeling a mix of awe and dread. That single moment, so dangerous, so unexpected, sent a chill down her spine. That night, alone in her small apartment with only the soft hum of the city outside for company, Mira replayed Adrian's words over and over. It was as if every syllable etched itself into her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was now walking a tightrope with no safety net beneath her. Her phone buzzed in the quiet darkness. The screen lit up with his name. "Adrian, can I see you?" The message trembled on her screen, its urgency pulling at her heartstrings. Mira hesitated, Every rational part of her screamed that she should say no, that she should take a step back before things spiraled further. But her heart, already dangerously open, whispered a different truth. With a deep, steadying breath, she typed a single, resolute word. Yeah. In that instant, she knew with a clarity that both terrified and exhilarated her, she was falling, and there was no stopping it now. Less than 20 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Mira opened it to find Adrian standing on her threshold. He didn't wait for an invitation or hesitate in his approach. He stepped inside with that signature confidence, closing the gap between them in a heartbeat. "I don't do this," he murmured, his voice rough with vulnerability. "I don't chase people, Mira." His words, both a confession and a challenge, sent her heart pounding in her ears. "Then why are you here?" Mira asked, her voice barely a whisper as she searched his eyes for an explanation. Adrian exhaled sharply, his gaze softening as he leaned in closer. "Because I can't stay away," he admitted, his tone filled with a raw, desperate honesty that left no room for doubt. And then, as if the unspoken desires between them demanded expression, he kissed her. It wasn't soft or tentative. Instead, it was a forceful release of everything that had been bottled up between them since that fateful flight. It was everything unsaid, everything unspoken, all the emotions and yearnings that had built up in the space between their lives. In that kiss, Mira felt her carefully constructed defenses crumble. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she didn't think. She simply let herself fall into the moment. When she finally awoke, sunlight streamed through her window, and the unmistakable scent of Adrian still lingered on her sheets. Disoriented, she blinked, trying to piece together the fragments of a night that had both terrified and exhilarated her. The memory of that passionate kiss came flooding back. How he had pressed her against the door, his hands firm yet gentle, and the way he had whispered her name as if it were a sacred promise. They hadn't crossed every boundary that night. They had shared something raw and transformative. After the kiss, they ended up on her worn-out couch, talking about everything and nothing. Work, Theo, and the kind of man Adrian aspired to be. Gradually, conversation gave way to silence, and eventually, sleep claimed them in a tangle of limbs and whispered dreams. When Mira awoke, she found herself sitting upright on the couch, her heart still fluttering with the echoes of their intimacy. But the space beside her was empty, and a pang of panic gripped her. Had he left? Before she could dwell on the thought, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the room. Moments later, Adrian reappeared, casually strolling in with his shirt unbuttoned at the top and 2 steaming coffee cups in hand. "You're awake," he said in a tone that belied the intimacy of the night before, handing her a cup as if it were the most ordinary gesture in the world. Mira stared at him, a mixture of disbelief and amusement dancing in her eyes. "You make coffee?" she teased, and Adrian's playful smirk deepened. "I'm capable of basic human tasks, Carter," he replied, his tone light yet laced with genuine warmth. Mira laughed softly, shaking her head. "Could have fooled me." For a few precious moments, they sat together in a quiet camaraderie, the world outside momentarily forgotten. But as the weeks blurred into an indistinct montage of deadlines at Westbrook Media, hospital visits for her mother, and late-night conversations with Adrian, the stakes grew higher. They weren't officially a couple, yet their bond was undeniable. Late-night phone calls, breakfasts shared before the chaos of the day took over, dinners that stretched into endless conversations, and stolen kisses that fueled both hope and uncertainty. The more time Mira spent with Adrian, the more dangerous her feelings became. Not because of the physical allure, but because of the emotional vulnerability he awakened in her. It wasn't just about his charm or his power, it was about the way he looked at her, as if trying to decode every hidden facet of her soul. He softened when he spoke of his past and his regrets, and though he never pushed too hard, he never let her drift away either. In his presence, Mira began to feel something she hadn't felt in years. She started to feel truly alive, and that realization was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. Then, one afternoon at work, her phone buzzed with an unexpected name. Marcus, her ex-husband. The mere sight of his name sent her stomach into knots. She hadn't heard from him in months, not since the day he had stormed out of her life after a bitter argument over Theo. With a pounding heart, she stepped outside the office to answer his call. "Marcus?" she greeted, her voice tight with apprehension. His tone was clipped and unreadable as he stated simply, "We need to talk." When she inquired if it was about Theo, his response was curt, "We'll talk when I see you, tonight." And with that, the call ended abruptly, leaving Mira trembling and uncertain about what awaited her. In the midst of her swirling doubts, she immediately texted Adrian, "I need to see you." His prompt reply, named the time and place, brought a semblance of stability to her frantic thoughts. Deep inside, Mira knew that whatever was coming next would irrevocably change everything. It was a turning point, an invitation to step into a future filled with risks, secrets, and the possibility of love. As if on cue, Adrian's final words from that night echoed in her mind. "Don't miss what happens next." And so, in true YouTube fashion, here's our final message. If you've been captivated by Mira's journey, from a life defined by survival to one filled with passion, mystery, and the courage to embrace change, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you're the first to catch the next chapter of this incredible story. What do you think lies ahead for Mira? Will Adrian's secrets ultimately bind them together or tear them apart? Share your predictions and join the conversation. We can't wait to hear from you. Maybe in each of our lives, there's a moment like Mira's, a fateful flight, a hand reaching out at just the right time, someone who reminds us that we still deserve the dreams we thought we had to let go. Mira's story isn't just about love or career. It's a gentle reminder that no matter where you start, as long as you have the courage to keep going, life will always offer you a second chance. And sometimes, change doesn't begin with a grand plan. It starts with something as simple as, "Have breakfast with me." If you've ever stood at a crossroads like Mira, between safety and a dream, between the past and the future, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd truly love to hear your story. If you felt inspired, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in this journey. Because, who knows, the next story might just be yours.